the amount of gold that's come into the country, Mark, is ridiculous. I mean, it truly is. It is unprecedented. And to give you an idea, every time I've been on your show this year, I've screamed about how much gold is coming in the country, right? And okay, but just to give you an idea of what I'm talking about here for the August delivery contract, in the first 3 days of the August delivery contract, um, 20,000. Before I say that, forever I would say to people, look, less than 1% of contracts issued on COMEX my entire career, 35 years, ever stood for delivery, ever. Now, they're all standing for delivery. I mean, tons of them. And a lot of it's leaving the COMEX. It can be delivered, but that means delivered to COMEX. And then loadout means it's leaving the ecosystem. Bye bye, gone. A lot of it's doing that. But in the first 3 days of the August contract, 20,126 contracts stood for delivery. Each contract is 100 ounces. That's over 2 million ounces of gold, and has a value of approaching $7 billion. And what's really significant, even aside from the fact that the early numbers in a month that isn't a major delivery month for gold, August, huge volume. But what's even more interesting is that every single contract that's been issued this month so far has been stopped, which means stands for delivery. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. That means physical delivery is actually taking place, not just speculative paper settlement, in a 1-to-1 ratio. Every one of them, 100%. So when you realize that less than 1% used to stand for delivery, 100%, and the question, and a lot of it leaves. So who's buying $7 billion worth of gold in the first 3 days of the August contract, which can now be delivered? And there's still a lot of open interest left, meaning open contracts that can stand for delivery. So when it's all said and done, it could be a lot more than just what has already posted for delivery, and it will be. But the point of it is that he's right. I think he's very right. And I've been saying that I do believe, remember, that Judy will said they're going to issue gold-backed treasuries. Well, on July 4th, 2026. The reason that this could actually work would be to peg the back end of the treasury market, the bond market, to gold and have it deliverable. And the reason you would do that would be that you could have zero interest rates on the long maturity bonds at zero, and peg it to gold redeemability. That acts as the interest rate. It acts as the inflation hedge. And I believe that's what they intend to do. So if they revalue gold, as everyone keeps talking about, and I've been saying it on your show for over a year, what's it held in? The gold revaluation account. Now, again, everyone is saying it. And I've been saying it for over a year, they're going to do this. Maybe I'm just stupid that I say it out loud in front of millions of people. Maybe I have the courage or the stupidity, not quite sure. And that's how it was with BRICS. For 5 years, I said this shit, and no one said it. I got laughed at. You let me say it, and yet now everyone talks about it. And that's what's made me kind of well known in this industry, is my thesis on the BRICS, 5 years old, 5,000 videos on it. There's proof out there. No one was saying it. I am. So what I'm saying now is this new stablecoin bill. You're going to see corporations all around the globe issue stablecoins. You just saw JP Morgan yesterday said we've signed up with Coinbase, and we're going to start linking the accounts. First bank ever to do it. You can trade your earned Chase bank points into stablecoins, and the stablecoin issuance will all be backed by U.S. Treasuries. This is what they're trying to do. The legislation of it, regulation of it, is to monitor the on-ramp and the off-ramp, but it is to back the U.S. Treasury market with synthetic demand, not the organic demand. It's always had, but only the front end, up to 2 years. And that'll be Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, says, yeah, we can get up to $2 trillion a year on that, probably more. And all of these stable coins will be backed by treasuries, which will keep the front end going on the government. Back end, how do you bring back manufacturing? How do you do it? We owe $28 trillion in 3 years. The treasury's coming due. We only take in $15 trillion in revenue. We have a $3 trillion a year deficit. That's 37 trillion in 3 years we owe. We bring in 15 trillion. There's a problem. They're going to destroy the dollar. I believe their idea is to destroy the value of the dollar, to lose the reserve status. We don't want it. And even Vice President Vance has said being the world reserve currency at this stage of the game because of Triffin's dilemma is not good for us anymore. We should probably lose it. He wrote that on White House letterhead. Triffin's dilemma says as the world reserve currency, you'll always run a trade imbalance. You cannot give the world enough dollars just through trade alone. So they sell their currency to buy our currency. We produce more currency. They buy our currency and sell theirs. Theirs goes down, ours goes up, meaning their manufacturing is way cheaper. So we send our manufacturing over there, creates a trade imbalance. This is part of the reserve status, which has kept our asset prices high, our interest rates low, and our goods that we buy at Walmart cheap. This would allow them, if they devalue the dollar by revaluing gold. Now, remember, James Rickards, who's one of the smartest dudes in the world, who's run simulated war games at the Pentagon forever, financial war games, says 24,000. There are a lot of people that are saying 15,000, 12,000. His number he gets to by dividing the amount of gold we supposedly have, I think, into M2, and you put it at 24,000, the Treasury wouldn't even need Fed approval, as we've talked about. I mean, or congressional approval. They would just do so. The Fed would make it so. We would buy it from anyone that would want to sell it at that rate. Benefits every central bank on the planet because they've all been buying gold. And by doing so, you devalue the dollar in that scenario by about 60%. And the Treasury gets about 6 trillion free and clear. Every $4,000 increase, as I've said on your show, again, hammering it home. So you guys all remember this when it actually happens. Now everyone's the Federal Reserve just put out a paper yesterday entitled Official Reserve Revaluations, the International Experience on the Federal Reserve website. Now they're talking about it. So if that were to happen, and they were to revalue gold at a level like that, the dollar gets wickedly devalued. The Treasury issues gold certificates to the Federal Reserve, who holds the gold as collateral. That money is then created out of thin air. They print it. Every $4,000 is 1,000 increase to 24,000. That's 6 trillion. Fed can start to pay down its balance, or the Treasury can start to pay down its balance sheet. It's an accounting gimmick. That money was created out of thin air. So that money that is given and printed devalues the dollar tremendously. But then you would, and by the way, the Fed doesn't own that gold. They just have claim on the dollar value. But now you have a devalued dollar, much higher gold price, which allows you to work things off. If Judy is right and they peg the Treasury to it on the back end, on July 4th, 2026, you start selling treasuries with zero coupon, no interest, redeemable in gold, which acts as the interest or the inflation gauge. And what would this do? Well, let's look at it real quick. What would it do? If, first of all, this would be in essence a soft default on the dollar. In other words, we're no longer the reserve currency. And this is why you see all of these countries creating this deal of cross-border payment with local currencies settling in balances in gold. That's the whole premise of the bridge network in the BRICS, which I do want to talk about in a moment. A development that just is shocking. Again, it's accelerating what I talked about on your show many times recently. But in any case, you devalue the dollar, you have massive inflation to start to pay off the 28 trillion in treasury issuance that comes due in 3 years. You can do all of that stuff, and then you have the stable coins issued to run the front end of the curve up to 2 years and keeps the engine going. The back end has zero interest rates and a devalued dollar, which means you can now bring home your manufacturing, which is what he wants to do. Because you can't sell your goods at a high priced dollar, you get a trade imbalance. Instead, the dollar is devalued. Zero interest rates mean you can move everything back at a zero cost to borrow, bring that back, build your critical infrastructure, and grow your way out of this problem for our future generations. I really do think that gold is going to back the system, and it's going to go higher than people think. And the revaluation is to devalue the dollar, is to bring our manufacturing back. Because if we don't, 60% of this country is not college educated, and AI is going to kneecap a lot of the white collar jobs. So where do people work? And can we really allow, all of our critical manufacturing, like pharmaceuticals, who is putting another tariff on pharmaceuticals? Silly, to your point, to bring it back. But microchips, all this stuff, we need to make it ourselves. We need to be the engine of ingenuity and manufacturing. We don't, and that's what we need to do again. And the only way to do it without blowing up the system with higher rates is to peg something to the back end of the treasury to have zero interest rates and a devalued dollar. Bring it back. That devalued dollar allows us to sell cheaply. The zero interest rates allows us to bring it back cheaply, inexpensively, without blowing up the whole system. So yeah, you in essence sacrifice the dollar and the reserve standard to get to a point where we are the engine of freedom, ingenuity, manufacturing. It's just going to take some pain. Like I say, it's the Shawshank Redemption moment where Andy Dufresne
Gotta
had to
climb
crawl
through the
through
sewer.
2 miles of shit to get to the other end. Well, we have to do that somehow, some way. And that's what this is. So I would say that silver is the most undervalued asset in the world. And if gold goes parabolically higher, silver will follow it to a large degree for sure. They told me that there would be two resets. The first one would be man-made, and I think you would agree. We're in the midst of that right now, Mark. And the second one would be Mother Nature. The man-made reset would fail. Mother Nature one wouldn't. And when Mother Nature took over, the U.S. government would confiscate anything that was not U.S. in origin. Now, this comes from Jim, and he meant it. He said it. Um, so take that for what that means. I mean, if I had my druthers, I would buy only American. But for those of you that don't, look, for the first several years that I knew you, Mark, and during the pandemic, I told everyone, do not buy American made because the premiums are too high. And they were. During the pandemic, Silver Eagles were $14, $15 over spot. You can buy them now. They make sense now. Then they didn't. Gold Eagles were 250 over spot. Didn't make sense now, but it does then, but it does now. So if you own Krugerrands or Maple Leafs or Kangaroos or bars, it was because the value that you got in the number of ounces, as my mentor Richard Russell used to say, in the end, all that matters is the number of ounces you have. Now, I would caveat that by saying, don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Don't have all of your stuff in 1,000-ounce silver bars and kilo gold bars. The lack of flexibility will kneecap you. So instead, in a perfect world, yes, you buy 1 ounce gold and silver American Eagles and gold Buffaloes and pre-33 gold. All of that stuff is great. But the first 3 years I knew you, it made zero sense to buy it. So take that for what it's worth, please.